Welcome to Victoria Rumble Room, a show that endeavors to bring you highlights from a West Coast perspective of things going on in British Columbia, Canada, and the wide world. I'm Robin Adair, and as always, across town, my co-host with the most, John Jurisic, of course, is standing by, getting ready to rumble from his Saanich lair, and boy, some big issues to discuss, John. Let's start off maybe with all this gunfire.
Never-ending issues to discuss, Robin. What is going on in the world in and amongst all of the chaos and danger and gunfire? Gunfire in Nanaimo. 2 men shot down in broad daylight. In gangland killings in Whistler. We had gunfire and people killed in Langley. Gunfire, people killed in Chilliwack. What are we? I feel like I'm living in LA. And of course, this follows right after 6 officers shot at that recent bank robbery in Saanich. Too many guns, Robin. And apparently, it's still too easy for the wrong people to acquire them in this country, even making them. Some of these were guns that were made. We don't have the same level of gun violence as they do in the States. I get it. But one death is one too many from gunfire. Guns are here. They need to be silenced, Robin. I really think banning all rapid fire weapons is essential, crucial. Hunters don't need them, okay, to kill an animal. And if anyone gets caught with them illegally, frankly, they need to go to jail for a long time.
I have heard from sources that I have within the police that we'd be shocked at how readily available firearms are, that it's not that difficult to get firearms in Canada even today. They smuggle them up from the States. I don't know how they can go undetected. How would those 2 kids out in Duncan, the 21-year-olds who died in that Saanich robbery, have acquired these weapons? I mean, what's going on? It's just terrible, John. And we've got to do something to stop all these firearms because it's making our streets dangerous. But let's move to a different topic. We're going to have a new premier soon. John Horgan, as we all know, is moving off the stage. And there's been minister after minister, MLA after MLA on the NDP side who's saying, no, I don't want to be the next leader. And then stepping forward, the white knight to lead the charge is going to be Housing Minister David Eby, who said, yes, I am going to step in and run. And it looks like he'll be the only candidate. So he is indeed going to be the next premier. So here's what he has to say.
And I want to thank the 48 MLAs in our caucus who are supporting me here tonight. 48 MLAs. It is because of all of you. It is because of all of you and your confidence in me. Zussman. It's because of all of you and your confidence in me that I will be putting my name forward, and I want your consideration as the next leader for the BC NDP.
Next week, we're going to dig a lot deeper into MLA David Eby and what he brings to the table, what he might bring as premier and leader of our province. But let's, first of all, before he's elected, before he's anointed, why don't we talk a little bit about our current premier, John Horgan, who walks away as one of the most popular politicians in the country, if not one of the most popular premiers in BC's political history. You know, UVic's Michael Prince has been making a study of BC politics for years. He's on many radio stations and has been commentating for years and has a lot to say why John Horgan has been successful. Let's zoom him in.
And now joining us again in the Victoria Rumble Room is the University of Victoria's very own Dr. Michael Prince. Great to have you back on the show.
Great to see you both, John and Robin. Happy to be back.
what's happened that's been big news in the last couple of weeks is reaction to the outfall of the announcement by Premier John Horgan that he is going to step down as Premier. He's had some health issues, a couple of battles with cancer. No one can blame him. And, really, it seems that he is leaving on a very high note. He has a very strong approval rating, if you believe the opinion polls, one of the highest approval ratings for a premier in the country. And, he's been dealing with some big stuff. We've had COVID, we've had pipelines, we've had the Royal BC Museum, and he still seems pretty buoyant. And I'm wanting to know, do you think part of this is because of the man himself, his own personal political acumen? Is he somebody well suited for leadership?
Absolutely. I used to work with a fellow who said, always be a little cautious about someone who really wants a job badly, particularly in the world of politics. And we know that John Horgan, he did run for the leadership race. He came third. Adrian Dix became the leader back in 2010, 2011. And then after that disastrous election for the NDP, they went searching again. And John Horgan didn't want the job. He said, no, we need generational change. We need a major renewal. And everyone said, well, no one else really wants to step up. John, we want you. He finally reluctantly, and I don't think it was playing coy or playing a bit of a dance there. I think he really thought it was time for someone else. But he took it on. He got acclaimed, as you know, and he rebuilt the party. And the rest is history in terms of what the 2017 election was, and then the snap election and the majority he obtained. So, he came to the job very grounded, a lot of experience politically in this province and also federally, and stayed connected. I mean, how many times in a press conference would I hear him refer to the people of Langford? I mean, he was not only a premier, he was still a very good constituency MLA, which I think kept him grounded. People would come up to him. He talked to people. I remember once I was at a Harbour Air catching a flight over to Vancouver, as was he. And I saw him and I thought, well, he had his people around him. I thought, well, I'll keep my distance, leave him alone. He's working. And he caught sight of me and he said, hey, Professor, how do you think we're doing? And I said, I just did this. I gave him a thumbs up and he gave me a big smile and a thumbs back. And he kind of was that kind of, he reached out, he was a people person. And
but he also listened, didn't he? He listened to what the public was saying, and some things that I know his own party badly wanted, like closing down the Site C Dam or stopping all the pipelines or even the museum. I mean, he really tuned into what the public was thinking.
Yep. And and as you well know, because you covered the legislature for so many years, one of the long-standing knocks about the NDP was, they eat their own. They really know how to kind of get caught up in internal divisions. And he made some tough decisions, like the Site C Dam decision, and he got the caucus and cabinet to hold together on that. What's impressive about that was how, that really was a challenging, big decision early on with an untested caucus, a group of politicians not used to the discipline of power, and he worked that one through. That showed you a style that he had, that he commanded the respect. And he didn't do it through bullying. I mean, sometimes, leaders get consensus, but it's a hard one. It's one that's some people grumble about and feel it's been imposed on them. But no, he bucked the trend too. I mean, how many times do we see someone who's on top know when it's time to go? And to walk out head up high. And as you said, the accolades, even that press conference, it was intriguing to see the affection from the reporters. Professional journalists, you could just tell in their voices an admiration, even though, and he poked a bit of fun with a few of them and he had a good kind of relationship. But you're right, he was approachable, he was a listener, and he admitted mistakes. And how refreshing that is. I mean, I said the other day, I think to a reporter, in this age now of politicians so cocooned, so kept separate, so managed, so many talking points that you stick to, and they repeat them ad nauseum, even though and the public sees through that now. They know when they're being had or they're being managed and spun. And with John Horgan, there was a refreshing openness there. There was a sense that if you bumped into him, you could have a beer with him, or you could shoot the breeze with him, or if you just saw him in the street, that he yeah, he give you the straight goods.
Yeah, Michael, thank you for that summary. I agree on all those points, which leads, therefore, to now my more sort of, contextual question, that being, where does that leave the party? I mean, those are big shoes to fill. And clearly one leader can make such a difference. I mean, there was generally assumption over the last 40 years in BC politics that the right-ledgered party, whether it be a social credit or liberals, would rule forever, and one man made a difference.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that. What do you think is the next little bit here for the NDP, and how's that going to turn out?
Well, they've got a pretty ambitious timeline. He said stepping down, he hopes in the fall. So I think, usually that favors insiders as opposed to someone who may not be already in cabinet or a high profile in caucus. At the end of the day, we'll see. But, I think it could be an interesting mix and it'll be a way of reviving, renewing the party, as when you see with the Liberals with a new leader and talking about a name change and looking at refreshing what that party stands for. This is an opportunity for the NDP to engage in their own from the comfortable perch of a majority government. So,
yeah, we know how quickly those can dissipate, though, don't we? And,
yes,
and all
absolutely.
it's going to take is the next crisis. And the other thing I'd say about it, Michael, and I know it's a great thing to think about young people that could come up and take the reins of power, but I don't see them. I don't know who they are, and they need to rapidly have somebody in that job who knows what they're doing, or at least has a notion of it, who has sat at a cabinet table and has an idea about how the government operates. I think the smart money is on David Eby, and then the question really comes: does he have what it takes? Does he have that his ability to listen? It's not something everybody necessarily on the surface you can tell. They've got to be in the job, and you got to see whether they can actually do the work and whether the proof is in the pudding. And, Kevin Falcon is not a weak sister. That's going to be a tough battle with Kevin Falcon running the Liberals. It will be very different than the last provincial campaign we saw.
Oh, yeah. No, he knows how to do what we call retail politics. He knows how to get out there. He's talking about housing in a way that connects it in concrete ways. You can see he enjoys it. He enjoy, like a John Horgan. They enjoy wading in. He enjoys mixing it up. He's very effective on TV interviews, radio. Andrew Wilkinson just never looked comfortable in his own skin.
Robin, I mean, we look forward to hearing more from Dr. Michael Prince on a future program when we dig into the shifting sands of world politics. Shifting sands, it's more like a hurricane of sands, including the rise of the Conservatives in Canada. Do they have a glass ceiling? Is there some limit to their appeal? Well, we'll find out. So much to explore, Robin. And speaking of exploration, how about some of the viewer comments from our previous interviews? This viewer comment thing, it's exploded on our show. We've got hundreds and hundreds of comments per show. We went from, one or two to complete insane arguments. Let me give you a little bit of flavor of what's happening here. Here's one from David, who's commenting on our coverage of the recent Langford humanitarian mission to Ukraine, right? I mean, what an amazing thing that Langford and Mayor Stu Young did. Well, this guy says, if people cared about the Ukrainians, they would disavow the NATO war machine. Also the masks, something, we covered differently on another show, are voluntary burqas in the religion of normalized anxiety.
Well, people say a lot about the Saanich bank robbery. We notice, and a lot of these notes arrive to us via Facebook. And, of course, with the twins from Duncan who robbed the bank and shot 6 people. And Tom writes, fake news. Nobody would be stupid enough trying to rob a bank. There's no money in a bank. It's all at the Vatican and under the Queen's castle.
I sort of believed him. There was no money in the bank until the last part of that comment. We've talked a lot about this Conservative leadership race. I mean, I just referenced it a minute ago, and the way Pierre Poilievre uses messaging that sometimes sounds like Donald Trump. This has drawn lots of comments. Lots of comments. Like this message from Paul, who says, I like how that guy blames it on my boy Trump. I literally blame this on Trudeau. These prices of living here on the island, the gas prices, and all of our rights being stripped away, COVID mandates, the list goes on and on.
He's got a grab bag of things he's unhappy about, and we're happy that he can share. Here's what Patricia had to say about the Premier's response to the doctor shortage and also the BC ferry problems with all those cancellations. And this is what Patricia says. He, and that's the Premier, has made a mess of things that people need, like healthcare workers. BC Ferries is so disgusting that we can't go to a funeral in Vancouver because we might wait 5 boats just to get there. Our fearless leaders are not doing their jobs. And so, you know, we really do appreciate these comments, and we encourage people to share with us, and we're happy to review a few of them, and we hope people maybe enjoy reading them and can be entertained and maybe even learn a few things by hearing what their fellow man and woman have to say. Anyway, John, let's now shift fully to BC Ferries.
And oh my gosh, won't this topic bring a bucket load of comments? Former NDP cabinet minister and party leader Joy McPhail is no longer a politician. She's out of the political eye, but very, very much influential. She's certainly working hard for her party and government, doing committee work. You know, generally committee work is sort of under the table, not with Joy. She was chair at ICBC, where they introduced no-fault insurance. And recently she became chair at BC Ferries and promptly fired CEO Mark Collins.
And you know, John, they're also talking about changing the Ferry Act and increasing direct government oversight of BC Ferries in the not too distant future. And I think firing the CEO is a big step in that direction. So here to talk about it is the opposition critic for fisheries, aquaculture, and ferries, Jordan Sturdy. Let's zoom him in. And now joining us in the Victoria Rumble Room for the first time is the opposition critic for BC Ferries, Jordan Sturdy. And Jordan, great to have you on the program.
That's a pleasure, Robin.
Now, you know, an organization that admits that it had to cancel 173 sailings, and that was over only 28 days. And, you know, has been working with a worker shortage for quite some time and doesn't seem to be able to remedy that. It's maybe not that surprising that the head of this organization would get pulled in the carpet and maybe face a firing. So, I mean, I'm not surprised about it. How surprised were you?
Well, I guess I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised because this is a long time coming. Certainly, there's, I think the NDP government has demonstrated a dislike for the corporation, a dislike for the current governance structure, and a disdain for the CEO and, frankly, the various boards that they have, both the authority board and the services board. So, this, I think we could all see this coming back to when Claire Trevena was the minister. She just hated these. And I think there's evidence that the Premier's office isn't a big fan of BC Ferries either. So not a big surprise. Although whether it was deserved or not is, I think, a different question.
Jordan, we really appreciate you joining us. Thank you. Besides being the BC Liberal critic for BC Ferries, you're also the MLA for West Vancouver, Sea to Sky, and that includes the Horseshoe Bay Terminal and Whistler. And of course, we all realize how very important the ferry system is during these
Big tourist months.
Yeah, big tourist months. I was going to say essential, you know, in these COVID times. What could CEO Mark Collins actually have done differently?
Well, that's a good question. I know that they have hired close to 1,000 new staff over the course of the last 6 or 7 months, trying to fill some of these positions. But you know, they are limited by Transport Canada requirements as well. And if you don't have your deck officers in place, you're not sailing. If you don't have the crew complement, you're not sailing. And so this has been, I think, a very challenging time for many industries. I know the tourism industry is the same. I'm in that industry, and we're operating on very skinny personnel, and we don't have the same limitations that are imposed by Transport Canada. So it's a tough one. I really couldn't say, but I think what the number I heard is that there's 500 sailings a day on BC ferries, and less than 8 of them on average are affected. So, we got to keep it in perspective as well.
Well, Jordan, I've been involved in communications all my life. I've owned businesses all my life. And when things get tough, you communicate more. When things are difficult or they're conflict, you accelerate communication. At the very least, these folks could have been telling us why this is happening. You go to the terminals, the ferry's canceled, and you leave mad and angry. I think there could have been some leadership around communications. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't disagree with you. You can always improve communications, but I'd say that maybe the government has some responsibility here as well. And when we talk about the termination of the CEO, and well, that may be fair or not fair. At the end of the day, Ms. McPhail, who's appointed to be the chair of the authority board, comes in, doesn't bother to meet with the CEO at all for well over a month, and calls him in for a meeting, and the first thing she does is fire him. So let's talk about communication, and perhaps a little better approach from the provincial government. I think I heard a comment the other day that I thought if we're going to judge the leadership of some of these organizations based on closures, and we're going to decide that because of the missed ferry sailings over the course of the last several months with BC Ferries, and this is all on Mark Collins, well then let's talk about Adrian Dix and the fact that people are actually dying because we don't have operating, or we don't have emergency rooms operating. We don't have BC ambulances showing up. This is life and death.
And I guess we have, so many of these players appearing in different roles through the years. Joy McPhail was kind of brought in as the dustbuster at ICBC, and now she has shifted over to BC Ferries. There was an excellent column by Les Lane in the Times Colonist, and he was talking about how the NDP has already tabled some new legislation to change the Coastal Ferry Act and to increase government oversight. And I think if you read between the lines on that, the NDP has never been very happy with this model where ferries is basically run as a business, even though it has government ownership, kind of as a crown corporation, somewhat like BC Hydro. And the NDP really doesn't like that lack of political oversight. It's not been working very well in the last little while. I guess that just kind of opened the door for them to make big changes.
Well, yes, I don't know that I don't know we can broadly say it hasn't been operating well. There has been some challenges. There's no question about that. But at the same time, as I say,
operating well during the COVID era, it opened the door, which allowed them to. Maybe they were fundamentally not happy with the system rather than the what they were able to accomplish.
Well, I think a good question for government was what problem are you actually trying to fix here? And I'm not sure that they really appreciate what has happened over the 15 years that the BC Ferries has been privatized. I think the capital expenditure was 3 times what it was prior to privatization. So I think we've all seen that the average age of the vessels, the fleet, has come down significantly. We've got new vessels, we've got new terminals, we've got new terminal buildings. We were left with basically a rickety rust bucket at the end of the 90s. The only thing they had left was they had those, the fast ferries that they managed to sell off for pennies on the dollar, and they're still, I think, in Dubai or something, sitting there. Good thing aluminum can't rust, because certainly there wouldn't have been a good outcome there. If I had any bit of advice for the NDP, and not that I necessarily provide them with it, but anyway, if I was to say something, it would be careful what you wish for here. This is a specialized industry that's been performing albeit with some challenges in the last year or so, but has been performing pretty well on most metrics and is globally recognized as a quality organization. And to bring politicians back into tinkering with it on daily operations seems like a terrible idea.
Good stuff. We'll certainly keep our eyes peeled on what goes on at BC Ferries in the future and steps that will be taken by this new regime. Joy McPhail on the board, and of course, the NDP government looking to get more involved once again in BC Ferries. And I should just mention, I've also been paying a lot of attention recently to the goings on of the Pope arriving in Canada to apologize to the First Nations about things that Christians have done to First Nations since contact. And fair enough, that's a spiritual leader coming to say those things, and the First Nations, I'm sure, appreciate it. And I do hear First Nations spokespeople, of course, everybody has an opinion, but I hear some spokespeople going, well, this is a start, but there's so much more that still needs to be done. And that's true. That's true. But I think some of these things go well beyond what a Pope's going to be able to do. It comes down to empowering First Nations to take back control of their communities, control of their futures. I think economic development opportunities, education opportunities still have to be paramount. I think it's really important that we honor our First Nations. I think changing names and changing street names, and even in the long run, changing the maps of Canada to reflect our Indigenous cultures is a great thing. But we also need to empower our Indigenous people to move forward with the rest of society and enjoy the bountiful Canada that we all love. So that's my little thought on that. And we are looking forward to talking more about David Eby next week. As I mentioned, we're going to get digging into what his future could look like. And we're also going to maybe dig back and look a little bit more at what Mr. Poilievre is talking about. I see Stephen Harper, the former Prime Minister, has now endorsed him. I think it's a pretty well a fait accompli that he will be the next leader of the Conservatives, going up perhaps against Justin Trudeau. If Trudeau chooses to run again, that's still an open question. So there's still lots to talk about, lots of Rumble Room fun. And John, with that, perhaps you'd like to talk about how people can follow our show, like the Rumble Room, and join our merry band.
Absolutely. Before I do that, we've interviewed Alice Ross now numerous times on the Rumble Room. And currently during this debate over how much the Pope can do to rectify or influence reconciliation, and he shares your viewpoints that economic empowerment is literally the best way in which to facilitate reconciliation, and is talking about that on Twitter as the Pope is in Canada. I encourage folks to go and see that. Now, when I say folks to go see that, well, there's a lot of them, and they are all over the Rumble Room and all of its platforms, which include Facebook, that include Twitter, and include our YouTube page. And of course, our YouTube page is host to all of our dialogue. There's also a Facebook Victoria Rumble Room News and Views group, which you could post your viewpoints. There is an Instagram page, and we have a TikTok page. And man, oh man, are when you look at these 5 or 6 platforms, it's almost like a race, right? And which of these is influencing people the most? We might not, want this or feel comfortable with it, but certainly TikTok and its way that it presents videos is becoming the most influential of this group. And we have one, and we have crazy comments on there I don't reference them because they're a little bit too crazy. So on that maybe happy, odd note, and I'm enjoying this beautiful summer weather to a point. I mean, to a point, it gets a little bit too, even, I'm trying to make sure I'm not sweating too much on the show. But, I remain, during this hot weather, John Jurisic, a man who loves to cycle on his e-bike so much that they're calling my street the Tour de Tulip.
The Tour de Tulip.
Yes.
Like the Tour de France.
Yes.
And John, I just admire that. I feel like I'm watching you tiptoe down Tulip on your bicycle, taking those sharp turns. And while you're taking those sharp turns, just like you do on the show, I say, rumble on.